Hello and welcome to Sacred Psychology, the podcast for misfits and mystics. Here, neuroscience and spirituality go hand in hand. Join me, Tamara Powell, on a no-holds-barred adventure outside the box, because that's where all the truly great shit happens anyway. Welcome back to Sacred Psychology. I'm your host, Tamara Powell. Many of you already know that I am a licensed therapist, coach, and soul mentor for nonconformists, and I hold extra expertise in the realms of sexuality, gender, and spirituality. And it is to those topics that we dive even deeper tonight under the beautiful rainbow spectrum. My guest is Mason Aid. They are an LGBTQ educator and business owner who loves talking about, quote, gay stuff, unquote, and having the awkward conversations that many of you tend to shy away from. And that's right, you may have picked up on it already. Mason goes by they, them pronouns. They identify as genderqueer, and this is really important to note. You see, a lot of people, usually over the age of 40, although still sometimes in the younger generation, depending upon where they grow up, are unfamiliar with the terminology and variance therein between people who may be binary or non-binary somewhere, agendered, bigendered, genderqueer, gender fluid. What are these terms? Do they matter? I think so, and I know Mason agrees. This is an incredibly timely and profound conversation. You think about it, and those of us who wish to identify as being more spiritually conscious or just all around general good human beings, it's important for us to be able to show love, honor, and respect to every being who comes across our paths. And so words are incredibly powerful. They hold deep meaning attached to the semantics and the possible stigma and the context from which they are driven. So join me in welcoming the one, the only, the ever incomparable Mason Aid. Hey Mason, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am great. Thank you so much once again for joining me tonight.
Yeah, fun times.
It's going to be. We're just going to follow the rainbow to all the things. Catch us up, though, for my listeners who have not been stalking you like I have. Can you give us a little overview about you and why you came to be so passionate about helping the queer rainbow spectrum?
All right. So my name is Mason Aid. I use they, their, them pronouns, and I identify as genderqueer. So it's exactly like there are two of me. Super simple. People make it a bigger deal than it needs to be. Like, it's totally. It's super easy. But kind of my story is I grew up on a farm in rural Northeast Missouri, conservative Southern Baptist, and then moved to Columbia to go to the University of Missouri and came out. And so from the time I was 17 until I came out at 23, I was inpatient 7 times in those 7 years for self-harm, suicidal thoughts, delusions, all that fun stuff, bipolar 1 diagnosis. And then I came out.
Yes.
And I haven't been inpatient since.
Which is so consistent with the research and my clinical experience. That once we live authentically, it's amazing how all that shit clears up.
Weird.
Yeah.
Weird.
Now, when you came out, though, did you come out both regarding gender and sexuality?
I initially came out as liking girls. I never really identified as a lesbian. Like, that just never fit. So I came out as liking girls, and I used liking girls and being gay as kind of an umbrella term, but I never really connected with lesbian. Well, and then it was, yeah, I know, right? And then it was about 2 or 3 years after I came out that I came out again. I was working in a textbook warehouse here in town and was working really hard reading a book about gender. that I was supposed to be shelving. And that was when I kind of went, oh, fuck, maybe there's another layer to this. Maybe I need to ask myself some questions and dig deep and see where I really fit. And so that's kind of when I started playing with gender. I cut my hair. I started going by my last name, which at that point was Mason. Convenient.
It is.
And just kind of over the next 2 or 3 years, really played with and explored what my gender identity was and is.
Right. Now, the vast majority of my listeners are pretty up on their lingo, but for those who may be catching me for the first time, can you explain a bit of this umbrella term of queer and why that's important?
So I love the word queer. Queer is amazing. Queer is a word that is being reclaimed and has been used as a slur in the past. So it's one that I think people need to be mindful about how they use it.
Yes.
But currently, it's nice to use queer as an umbrella term because LGBTQIAA+ is a mouthful. And using queer is a way to be more inclusive of all identities without having to spew out a bunch of letters. And, it's kind of like that fist raised FU.
Yep.
There's just something about the word queer that just like sticks it to the man.
And
I love that.
Not everyone does though. So I'm so glad that you brought that piece out about reclaiming it. I remember sitting, I think it was the 2012 American Psychological Association conference in Orlando. And one of the breakout sessions that I was in, there was actually a bit of a verbal altercation between a younger gay man and an older gay man regarding whether or not it was even appropriate to use the word queer, because for the older one, he said that was the term that was thrown at them when he was being beat up in high school. But the younger gay man, context was everything now. And he was talking about how freeing it has been for his cohort to not have to define themselves further into subcategories and to take back the word that had been used. Well, I don't identify as a lesbian, and I never have, but I'm a dyke. Yeah, amen.
You know what word's been used against me? That one. Right. And you know what? You're going to use a word against me. I'm going to say, screw you. I'm taking it back, and I'm owning it. Yeah, I'm a giant dyke. Deal with it. This is who I am. I'm queer. Yes, I am. Allow me to be flamboyant and throw rainbows and glitter and unicorns in the sky. Like, this is who I am. You can try to put me down for who I am, but I'm just gonna claim it, and I'm just gonna say no. You can't use words to hurt me. I will put power to those words and claim them as my own.
That's amazing. So growing up Southern Baptist, however, I can't imagine that was pretty easy for a queer child.
I have conflicting feelings because I saw so much love and so much beauty and so much grace in the people who I went to church with. Now, the church as a whole and the institution of the church, I saw a lot of hatred and a lot of hurt and a lot of pain. But there was a degree of I was able to hide my sexuality in my faith, because it wasn't that I wasn't attracted to men. It was that I wasn't attracted to any of the men in my area. None of them were godly enough. None of them were good enough. And so I was, being single to honor God.
Nice. Well,
and so I was able to kind of reframe that. And that's why I didn't come out until I was 23. I knew at 19 that I liked women, but I didn't come out. I wasn't able to come out until I was 23, but I was clueless until I was 19. I thought I was asexual or would just be like celibate.
I'm so amused at the fact that this is the first time I think I've ever heard God being used as a beard, so to speak.
Yes. No, exactly. God was my beard. I was like, nah. No, I'm not dating, but it's not because I'm gay. It's because none of these men are godly enough, and God hasn't led me to the right man yet.
Oh, it's fantastic. Your little one is so cute.
Sorry, there's a naked baby standing at the baby gate.
That's fantastic. And this is real life.
Yes. She's funny.
Yeah. So let's fast forward then. We'll just follow this rabbit trail.
Yes.
What's it been like to become a parent and to be married even before that?
Oh my God. It has been such a trip. Especially being a parent as a transmasculine person. So as someone who presents in a masculine manner and who, I'm read as female 98% of the time, but I'm read as a masculine woman. Right. When really I'm very much more a flamboyant feminine man, but semantics.
Romantic.
But I am read and treated more like society reads and treats men than I am as a mom. Sure. And so the double standard of parenting has there's this bright shining light on how much of I am not a woman, and how my experience, I'm in some mommy groups because there aren't, I'm in one trans and gender queer parenting group, and that's the only one on the internet. Right. It seems like. Mm-hmm. So I'm in these mommy groups because it's a better fit, and I'm more comfortable with women than I am with men in general. But there are so many times where I'm like, fuck, I need to shut up and sit down and listen right now because this is not my experience. Mm-hmm. And they're talking about what the men in their life are doing, and they're talking about me. And that's that moment where I go, okay, I need to step back and I need to hear what they're saying, and then I need to do better. And so that's kind of just really highlighted. And, when I take off work from the day job to take care of my sick child, people seem to think it's weird when my wife's the primary breadwinner. Mm-hmm. Duh, I'm taking off work.
Right.
But there seems to be this assumption that she should be the one to take off work. Mm-hmm. And just those little things of, and not having carried my daughter, having we went to a parenting thing, and the first question this lady asked us was, oh, how'd you conceive? I just met you.
How rude.
How'd you conceive? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. I love that you are really shining a light on all of the non-heteronormative issues that I don't think most people stop and think about, right? Because the default is heteronormative, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean at this point in life.
Right. Well, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And that's okay. But like I said, sometimes we got to shut up and listen.
Yeah. And so that brings me to one of the blogs that you wrote on the inclusion of all the things other than just ladies in these parenting groups and other female entrepreneur groups, for example, online. Talk to me about
that was so in a lot of entrepreneur groups, whether they are geared towards women or not, you get a lot of posts that begin with, "Hey ladies," and then of course they're trying to sell you something or talking about their glamorous 6-figure life. And in some groups that's totally appropriate, right? Because some groups I know that I am an outsider as a genderqueer person, and okay. But in a lot of groups, I'm like, there are a lot of men in these groups, and you're saying, hey, lady, who are you being mindful when you say, hey, ladies, or are you just saying it because you're assuming that this entire group is women? Mm-hmm. And there's a balance of being it's cool to have a target market, and it's cool to want to work with women, right?
Absolutely.
That's a thing. But what would you do with me? What if we were a perfect fit, but you said you only worked with women? Well, then I wouldn't feel comfortable working with you.
Right.
And kind of finding this balance of being mindful and intentional and thinking about, as the genderqueer and non-binary population grows, what are we doing to include people who identify outside of the binary?
Absolutely. And let's talk about those statistics that are increasingly glaring. You mentioned on your website that, for Generation Z, 13 to 30, it's quite a large chunk that is identifying as something other than perhaps heterosexual or heteronormative.
Yeah. So all the research I found on Gen Z, none of it is super comprehensive, super academic. It's mostly marketing research, but still like solidly done studies, just small sample size. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to preface it with that. But 2 or 3 studies have found that when you ask the Kinsey scale question to Gen Z, which is, where do you fall? 1 is exclusively heterosexual, 6 is exclusively homosexual, and then, 2 through 5 are kind of in the middle. But when you ask this question to Gen Z, less than half rate themselves a 1 as exclusively heterosexual.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, but I know there's some jaws hitting the floor right now hearing that.
Right? And when you look at gender and the way that this generation is playing with gender, you look like Smith, what's his name?
Jaden. Mm-hmm.
Jaden. It is Jaden. Like him, he's wearing dresses. You look at, we have these feminine men and these, people are playing with gender in this generation in ways that we haven't before. And people who identify as cisgender, which is, not transgender, who are playing with gender and feel more freedom to be who they are. And to like, my millennial brain is like blown away looking at Gen Z because I'm an old millennial, and an old millennial from a rural area, which is like, basically I'm a Gen X, right. And looking at, I work with LGBT teens in the town, or I just stepped down so that I could focus on my business and being a parent. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the group that we have, 13 through 18-year-olds, we have 25 to 35 kids a week. All but 2 or 3 of them use they, their, or Zer pronouns in addition to she, her, or he, him, or exclusively.
Wow. That's huge.
I mean, that's, again, you're talking about 25 to 30 teens, but you're talking about 25 to 30 teens in a town of 150,000, probably 20,000 of that is college students.
And those are the ones that are out and showing up at meetings.
And have supportive parents who can come to meetings and, all of those layers of access and, really privilege that gets these kids able to be there.
Yeah, so while we're on the topic, and I know that you have the chutzpah to go there with me for those listeners who are like, what in the hell? Why does it even matter that we use gender inclusive terminology? Why do we have to have so many designations now? Why are there they, them pronouns and Zer? And why do we have things like even pansexual or polysexual? Why does it matter? What do you say, Mason?
So in that, people have long told me, why do you need a label? Why are you labeling yourself? Well, it's because we as humans need labels. We need words to explain ourselves to other people as they get to know us. Absolutely. Obviously, we all transcend our identities, and there are as many ways to be pansexual or genderqueer or a lesbian as there are people who identify that way, right? Mm-hmm. But and like, as far as the pronouns go, for me, like, when you put on your socks and the seam is like in a weird spot on your foot.
Oh my God.
And then you put your foot in your shoe and you're just walking around and all day, like you're like,
I feel it now, God.
That's what it's like for me to have she, her, or he, him pronouns used. Like, it's not like painful or terrible, but man, it feels freaking weird. And by the end of the day, you just want to punch a wall.
Yes.
But when they, their pronouns are used, it's like this weight is off. And it's like this sigh of relief where like, okay, yes, it's like you took the shoe off and adjusted your sock and put it back on and you're like, oh yes, I can live again.
Yeah.
It's really not like this massive, yeah. Like, and I mean, like, for me, it's not a massive painful thing. Like, I work customer service for my day job and I get called ma'am, I get called miss, and like, it's obnoxious. It's not physically like for some people it is very incredibly painful and damaging. For me, it's this minor annoyance that is just nonstop. Right. And it's the nonstopness that microaggression, that just, man, it wears on you. It's hard.
Do you think that contributed to the self-harm for you
Oh yeah.
personally?
I hated myself. I hated myself. And I didn't know why. And I didn't know what I hated about myself until I realized that I was attracted to a woman. And when I realized that it wasn't deep respect, it wasn't, I wanted to be like her when I grew up, that it was a crush, I ran as far into the closet as I could go. And the next 4 years were the worst 4 years of my life. That's when I applied for disability. That's when my parents were told that my future would be living in a group home and maybe holding down a part-time job. And it's looking at my past is so confusing to me now because I have come so far and I'm so far removed from it at this point.
Right.
But 10 years ago, I came out. And 10 years ago, I started to heal from this wound, from this trauma in my life of having to lie about who I am, of having to hide, of feeling like there was something innately wrong with me. And I mean, it's something that I'm still healing from, and I think I will always be healing from. But, it's, my therapist always told me that I had to give myself as much time to get out of the pit as it took me to get there.
Smart therapist.
And, I was this punk ass kid. I was like, yeah, whatever. But you know what? It took me 7 years to get to where I was when I came out. And you want to know what happened 7 years after my last hospitalization?
What?
That's when I graduated from college.
Well done.
That's when I met my wife.
Mm.
That's when my shit started to turn around, for real turnaround. That's when I started to switch from this survival mode that I had been in for, really 15 years, 15 years, to a place where I really feel like I'm thriving. I graduated from therapy 2 weeks ago after 17 years of therapy.
Congratulations.
I'm still baffled by this, because I have bipolar disorder, but you know what? I take my meds. I've done the work, and nobody would know unless I was open about it.
Right.
And, I choose to be open about it because...
Yes, thank you for sharing. It's important.
Because people are dying and they don't need to.
Mm-hmm.
Because, people feel ashamed of an illness. That's like being ashamed of yourself for being queer. It's nothing you can help. It's there. So find your peace with it and do what you need to do to be healthy. Done.
Amen. Could not have said that better myself. Which brings me to two other questions that I have for you. So one of my personal passions is in spirituality alongside the gender and sexuality. And so we know from the research that when a spiritual community is affirming, it can be an incredible source of support. But when it is not, it can actually make things so much worse. And it's almost like we have a giant, crack in our worldview, because it's not like Mason stopped being a spiritual being. They were always connected to something outside of themselves, whether it was nature or another person, etc. So for you, when you came out, I know you've spoken, on your YouTube videos that you were actually excommunicated.
Yeah, I was excommunicated and formally removed from the church I was attending at the time. I was handed over to Satan, is what they told me. And my faith journey is complex and convoluted. I grew up Southern Baptist, but I have this strong influence from the Church of the Brethren, which is a small denomination that is kind of similar to Mennonite. They're pacifists. That's what my dad's side of the family was Church of the Brethren. And so I have this really strong influence of a different theology that really, in many ways, has been Christianity's saving grace for me. I am choosing to reclaim the word Christian, and I call myself a Christian. most Christians would not consider me a Christian because my beliefs are rather heretical. But I'm an elder at my church.
I love it.
And I have found ways to reclaim my faith and to take up space in the faith community. And, I've been very lucky to have found a faith community that is family and that is affirming and that like zero issues with pronouns, with name change, with any of it. They have been a massive support. And, it's really awesome when, I can talk about my big gay business at church on Sunday during the announcements and people are like, yeah, that's awesome. Like that's just because church was integral. Church saved my life. My faith and the people that I met through church they were my foundation during the worst years of my life. And I didn't throw my faith away. The church threw me away. And so I've had to come back and it's still scary to set foot in a church. It's still scary to be invested, but I don't know. I'm a Brene Brown nerd and we have to be vulnerable and we have to put ourselves in vulnerable positions and being in church is ultimately a healthy place for me when I am in the right church. Right. I still enjoy talking about theology and faith and, my faith is very, very vast and doesn't fit in a box anymore. And it's beautiful.
Yes. It's so consistent with what I hear from a lot of queer spiritualists. I personally identify as an omnist now. I grew up Assemblies of God, which was, conservative at times. Other churches, not so much. It just depends upon where in the world you're located. But for a lot of queer Christians, it was a little confusing to feel like, my relationship with God, the divine, whatever your worldview was solid. However, dogma, like you said, threw me, church threw me out. It was people's boxes that had a problem, and it can be really confusing.
Yeah. Well, and the theology that I grew up with was very damaging to me. The belief that, we are all sinners destined for hell and only God can save us.
I call that the wretch theology.
And I mean, that played a very large role in me feeling that I deserved punishment. And so I hurt myself. And I punished myself. That is, for me, the self-harm, the suicidal thoughts, it was self-punishment for being who I am. And for being not good enough for God. And for being not good enough for the church and for the people I loved and who I wanted to impress.
Wow.
And that's the thing is that I still go there. I still have to. I have not self-harmed in 8-9 years. I don't even remember at this point, but nearly a decade. And I get stressed out and that's just immediately where my brain goes.
Right. That's how,
that neural pathway got built. And now, I know what I need to do to not go there physically, but like mentally, that's the immediate response. And, that's hard.
So for any, young, queer, anybody on the rainbow spectrum listening, whether it's gender, sexuality, all the things, what would you say, knowing now what I'm sure you wished you could have known then? How would you encourage them?
You are enough. Find a community, whatever that community looks like, that embraces your enoughness. And seek out people who love you so much that it pisses you off. And keep on putting yourself in that position where you are loved so much it hurts. And if you're dealing with shit, take one baby step today. And then keep taking that same baby step until you're ready to take the next baby step. I look back at where I was 10, 15 years ago. And I'm like, how the hell did I get here? And then I look at it and I'm like, you know what? One day I decided I wasn't going to hurt myself that hour.
Mm-hmm.
And then I screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided I wasn't going to hurt myself again that hour. Mm-hmm. And I did it. Score, win, endorphin boost.
Yeah.
And then I kept doing it until one day I didn't hurt myself for a day. And then I didn't hurt myself for 2 days, a week, a month, and it's been like 8 or 9 years now. And, it's just making one decision that seems obnoxiously small. Like, make it obnoxiously small.
Yeah. Get your success.
And then, man, before you know it, you'll look back and be like, what the hell happened? This is like magic.
Shit,
you'll be like,
good advice for life. Forget about
I know, right?
Categories we're talking about. Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, you look back and you go, shit, I just graduated therapy after 17 years.
Yeah.
Like, I've been in therapy over half my life. Mm-hmm. And I'm not done because I have a mental health issue. Like, the only way I allowed myself to graduate was that I was like, okay, so if something happens and I need therapy right now. And my therapist was like, you'd email me and I'd get you in within 2 or 3 days. I was like, okay, I can graduate then. Because I need that. And I know I need that. But I don't need weekly therapy anymore.
Right. And for some people, it's just self-care. It's what they don't have it's therapeutic goals. So if you want someone outside to listen, then find you your person.
Yes. I mean, like,
mm-hmm.
just keep going.
Yes. And so for those of us who love someone who is queer, what do you need them to know? Let's talk about that. Like, what's the struggle? What do you wish people who were in love with or had love for a child, parent, friend who may be not completely heteronormative or using pronouns that people are used to?
It all comes down to respect and like listening to how people talk about themselves and using that to guide your conversations around them. And if it's someone close to you, like ask the questions, like say, hey, what pronouns do you use?
Possible. Yes.
It's not like, don't be a jerk about it, but like, hey, I see that you got your hair cut and you're kind of dressing more masculine now. Is there a different name you'd like me to use or different pronouns? I just want to be sure I'm on point. Or, like being open and honest and being like, hey, I heard this awesome podcast the other day and this person was genderqueer and it kind of blew my mind. What are your thoughts on that? And like just finding ways to have the conversation without it being super weird for both of you. Yeah. Because like knowing that my people are there for me, knowing that I am loved and that I am enough. Like that's one thing that I've really been thinking a lot about recently and working with my coach on is feeling enough.
Enoughness. I love it.
Like that I am enough just the way I am.
Yeah, we all need that. That just feels good to the soul.
Exactly. I mean, our needs are not so different from anyone else's needs, but imagine that a core part of who you are was invisible or ignored by 99% of the population. Imagine that you never felt truly seen and like you could be truly authentic because it does not exist in the minds of most people.
Right.
Like I can count on, all of my digits. It's probably more than just my fingers at this point, but like of people who truly see me for who I am and see my gender and see who I am.
And that's why this is an important conversation to have.
That's not many people.
Unacceptable. Absolutely.
I feel invisible all the time. And saying things like, oh, Mason, you're just a butch lesbian. Have you met me? I'm fabulous. Like, yeah, there's some overlap in my style and different, but like, I'm fabulous. Mm-hmm. I embrace my femininity.
Which takes me to business and your fabulous dollars, my dear.
Yes. Dollar bills.
Y'all. Let's talk about why businesses need to be considering this topic and why you have a consulting business designed just for this.
All right. So as of last summer, 2017, the LGBTQ community had nearly $1 trillion in spending power. Trillion.
Yes.
And you know what? There are places where I will never spend my money, either because of their policies and procedures, a bad experience I've had, or a bad experience a friend has had.
Mm-hmm.
There are places where I am like, take it all. Take all my money. Here you go. Because they have proven themselves with inclusive policies, inclusive practices. They have welcomed the LGBT community. They've done things like got gender neutral bathrooms and, hiring practices that are super inclusive and policies in the books. And you know what? I'm going to throw my money at them.
Absolutely.
So from a business perspective, it makes sense. And when you look at, like we were talking earlier about Generation Z being super queer, like, hello, they're, like 2021 entering the workforce. Do you want to retain talent? Yes. Yes, you do. Maybe you should be more inclusive so that these kids don't leave. And maybe you should be more inclusive so that these kids give you their money. And maybe you should be more inclusive so you're not an asshole. And, that's like, it's like my favorite thing. It's the combination of two of my favorite things. Like this whole entrepreneurial world is kind of new and marvelous to me. Mm-hmm. And I love it. And I love talking about gay stuff. And I love pushing people's boundaries and going on this journey with them. Because we're all on a journey together. And it's about taking what steps you're ready to take. And, maybe you're not going to be a huge push the envelope, throw it all to the wind. I'm going to be a radical and be out there person. Maybe, you know what, you could just say your space is for all women.
All women.
All women.
Yeah.
No matter what the doctor said when they were born.
Well said. So let's turn it on its head, though. What are some of your biggest pet peeves in culture, society, business? I don't care when it comes to the rainbow spectrum and awareness.
Not using super basic gender neutral language. There is no reason for me to call my student loan company and for them to ask me what my husband does. Like, ask me what my spouse does or what my partner does.
Easy swaps.
Easy swaps, bride and groom on copy. Well, how about the couple?
Good point.
And, mom and dad. No, how about parents? And just like there's so many super simple little things that we gender when we don't need to.
That's another good tweetable moment. We gender when we don't need to.
Exactly. # gay stuff. I don't know. I'm real good at hashtags.
That's a good one. Any other pet peeves that you find yourself getting on a soapbox about?
I mean, pronouns are my big thing that I talk about a lot because it's such an easy step to be respectful and to honor the people around you.
And it really doesn't take that much practice. Kids get it so quickly.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, it does take some practice. I still use the wrong pronouns for myself sometimes. Like, you don't have to be perfect all the time. But, you have to be intentional and work towards doing better. That's what matters, is doing better. But, there's so many like small things that people just don't see unless they're in the community. And then it's like this glaring neon light of like, I don't want to give you my money. I don't want to be around you. And, we all want to make the world a better place. Like, working with the teens as I've done for the last, 4.5 years, my biggest fear is that I will have a funeral to go to.
Oh, God.
And luckily I haven't, but I have had many times where actually in the past 2 months, the coordinators called me because now that I'm not a coordinator anymore, I have different boundaries with the kids. I'm allowed to, be friends with them. And we had a kid who we didn't know if this kid was going to have a place to live. And so we gave this kid my number. I met this kid and we were ready that if they needed to call me, I would find them a place to stay. And like, this is a 15-year-old kid who doesn't know if they're going to have a place to stay.
Yeah. I've seen that in my own practice. And they have lost their housing.
Yeah.
To find them housing. Yeah.
I have seen my older sister 3 times in the last 4 years. 2 of them were our grandparents' funerals.
Wow.
You know, I don't know what my sister has told my nieces and nephews about me, and I don't want to know because I know that it would break my heart.
It's just so frustrating to, think about because it's not like your personality change. It's not like the core essence of who you were being.
My hair's a little shorter and I use different words.
I was just going to say, regardless of how you were gendered or how your gender expression was.
Like, my hair's a little shorter and I use different words. Big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I kiss girls. Well, I kiss a girl. I don't kiss other girls anymore.
Shout out to your wifey, just one.
Like we're monogamous. Just the wifey.
Yeah. Well said. So as we start to wind down, this has been such a timely and so poignant conversation. Thank you. What do you find most sacred these days?
My time. And being mindful and intentional of where I'm spending my time and my energy.
So good.
That is where I am putting a lot of intention and realizing that I only have 168 hours a week. What am I doing with them?
That's some mindfulness for you. Hello.
17 years of therapy, right?
Well said. Oh, so good. So you have your own podcast that just came out. Congratulations.
I do.
So excited about this one.
Yes. Episode 2 launches tomorrow as of recording. It is called All the Letters.
Of course it is.
Because we're talking about all the letters. Mm-hmm. And it is interviews with LGBTQ people about their experiences in life and with business. I'm also interviewing some cishet business owners about what they have tried to do to be more inclusive and what they're learning and how they're growing. Because I feel like their voices need to be heard too. And people need to know that people are trying. and like it's just so much fun. It's just amazing conversations. It's not interviews. It's just me and friends, new friends chatting. And it's so much fun. It's so great.
I love it. And your business helps entrepreneurs do what? Including people like, hello, Denise Duffield Thomas of Lucky Bitch.
Yeah. No, that was super awesome to work with Denise. So I help businesses be more inclusive. So I look at your paperwork, your forms, intake, hiring, the practices you have, and the language you use within your copy. I also do trainings. I have a Patreon account that I've started to help support me, and I'm going to be doing quarterly master classes for people. I mean, you can buy into it or you can support me on Patreon. It's going to be super amazing, going really deep on different topics to help educate ourselves, because education is step number 1. And just really, really working and meeting people where they are. Okay, so you have a book that's coming out and you want to be sure you're inclusive. We'll go through that. You are about to launch, a new program and you want to be sure it's not offensive. Great. Let's audit that. Let's go through that together and be sure it's on point. You are launching your website. Let's check out your copy. Let's talk through this. And doing the education work so that people can continue to grow and learn and do better.
I love it. Mason, thank you so much. This was incredible.
Thank you. This was super fun.
Thanks for listening to the Sacred Psychology Podcast. I pray you found some inspiration and empowerment to go out and make this life the most fulfilling possible. You can follow Sacred Psychology on Facebook and YouTube. If you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Tag us on social media and let us know what you think as well. Please note that the information provided is not meant to convey professional, psychological, or medical advice. If you could use such services, I highly recommend seeking them out from someone you trust. To get in touch with me personally or to see how we might work together, please check out ariatherapy.com or talesfromatrapezoid.com. Until next time, everyone.